Amaya Johnson had never imagined that a letter would be what broke the illusion. Her neighborhood, a pristine slice of suburbia with perfectly trimmed hedges, quiet sidewalks, and polite greetings, had seemed like the reward at the end of a decade of sacrifice. But when she unfolded the anonymous envelope left at her door, she didn't feel welcome. She felt targeted. The letter claimed her porch decor violated HOA standards. No specifics. No photographs. Just a cold directive, immediate correction required. But Amaya's porch was tasteful and understated wicker chairs, neutral cushions, a pot of lavender in bloom. There were no blinking lights or garish plastic ornaments. Only a peaceful space she created to decompress after long days. The message beneath the official language was unmistakable. She didn't belong. Her presence disrupted an unspoken uniformity. It wasn't the furniture. It was her. A successful black woman, living alone, owning a home in a place where subtle barriers had kept others like her out for decades. She didn't respond with anger. She didn't rant or tear the letter apart. Instead, she folded it neatly, slid it into a drawer, and walked barefoot out onto her porch. The cool wood creaked under her steps. She sat in her supposedly non-compliant chair and stared out at the street as the lavender beside her swayed gently in the breeze. She wasn't going anywhere. In the days that followed, Amaya observed. She remembered lessons her grandmother had taught her about resilience, about quiet dignity, and about picking your moment. She noted the purple swing set on the Petersons' porch, the Adams' quirky lineup of gnome statues, the Rogers' oversized hanging plants dripping onto the sidewalk. None of them had received warnings. None had been called to the HOA office. Each morning, Amaya walked her Labrador, Samson, through the neighborhood with quiet purpose. She documented everything: photos, timestamps, addresses. The decor standards that had supposedly applied to her had clearly not been enforced on others. With each photo, each observation, her case grew stronger. But this was more than a case. It was a slow revelation. A realization that the neighborhood had never truly welcomed her. The smiles had been polite but shallow. The invitations to community events had been few and never quite warm. There were clipped greetings. People who didn't meet her eyes. Children told not to pet her dog. At the county office, Amaya sifted through public records. HOA meeting minutes stretched back 5 years. They were dull at first: landscaping budgets, complaints about noise levels, mundane rule updates. But buried within the bureaucracy were patterns. Vague complaints disproportionately aimed at new homeowners, especially those with last names that suggested they weren't white. Notes about preserving the neighborhood's feel, preventing decline, and avoiding disruptive appearances. She spent her evenings combing through the HOA's bylaws. A binder thick as a law textbook sat on her dining table. The language was vague by design. Terms like appropriate aesthetic, cohesive character, and community harmony left much room for interpretation. But nowhere did it prohibit wicker chairs. Nowhere did it mention potted lavender or neutral cushions. Amaya compiled a binder of her own. It grew slowly, piece by piece. Photos of porches more elaborate than hers. Bylaw excerpts. HOA meeting notes. Screenshots of social media posts where board members made casual remarks about protecting the culture of the neighborhood. Individually, these might be brushed off, but together they painted a clear picture. She smiled at neighbors when she passed them. She baked banana bread for the new couple 2 doors down, a same-sex couple who had also seemed to receive more than their fair share of passive hostility. She even hosted a book club, choosing titles by authors of color, works that explored identity, justice, and home. The next board meeting was announced 2 weeks later. Amaya prepared meticulously. Her binder was organized. She dressed in a navy pantsuit, clean lines, minimal jewelry, hair in a neat bun. She walked into the community hall with the calm grace of a woman who had fought battles before and come out stronger. The room buzzed with tension. Rows of plastic chairs were filled with residents, some curious, some disinterested, some clearly hoping for drama. The HOA board sat stiffly behind a long folding table. Mrs. Whitmore, the president, wore her signature tight smile and her reading glasses perched just so on her nose. When her name was called, Amaya stood. She approached the front with quiet confidence, placed her binder on the podium, and began to speak. Slide after slide appeared on the projector screen. Porches with neon chairs, wind chimes, metal sculptures, holiday wreaths still hanging long after the season ended. None of them hers. Her voice was calm and deliberate. She read from the bylaws, highlighting how none of these decorations, including her own, violated any specific rule. She showed timestamps, addresses, dates, and then she presented the letter from a civil rights attorney outlining how selective enforcement of HOA rules could constitute racial discrimination under federal housing laws. The room was silent. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Whitmore looked flushed. One neighbor, Mr. Patel, raised his hand and said, "She's right. We all know it. This isn't about furniture." The silence broke. Others nodded. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Amaya didn't say much more. She didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. Within a week, Mrs. Whitmore resigned, citing health reasons. 2 more board members followed. The selection process for their replacements was, for the first time, open and community-led. One afternoon, Amaya found a formal letter in her mailbox. This time, it wasn't anonymous. It was signed by a dozen neighbors, asking her to run for the board. She thought about it long and hard. She didn't want politics, but she realized she couldn't walk away. Change required commitment, so she accepted. Amaya became the first Black woman elected to the HOA board. Her first motion, to revise the language in the HOA bylaws, making them clearer, more inclusive, and less subject to interpretation. The motion passed. Months passed. More families moved in. The neighborhood began to shift. Front yards bloomed with personality. Children played freely. Neighbors started greeting each other by name. Porch decor became a celebration of life rather than a battle for approval. Amaya often sat on her porch, watching the sunset with Samson at her feet. Her wicker chairs remained. Her lavender thrived. And for the first time, she felt seen. She knew the fight wasn't over. It never would be. But for now, there was progress. And peace. Not because she shouted the loudest, but because she refused to be moved. Because truth, dignity, and perseverance had a power all their own.